Imagine an empire that conquered more land in a single lifetime than any other power in history. An empire whose armies thundered from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Europe, toppling kingdoms, shattering armies, and redrawing the political map of Eurasia forever. Now imagine that this same empire, without intending to, without planning it, without even noticing it first, laid the foundations for another world-changing power that would rise from its shadow. This is the story of how the Mongols, through conquest, chaos, and collapse, accidentally created the conditions that allowed the Ottoman Empire to be born. At the beginning of the 13th century, the Islamic world of Anatolia was dominated by the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. It was a sophisticated state, rooted in Persian administration, Turkic military traditions, and Islamic law. Its cities were wealthy, its caravan routes vibrant, and its armies formidable by the standards of the medieval Middle East. But this world existed on borrowed time. Far to the east, a new force had risen under Genghis Khan, a leader whose vision of conquest was as boundless as the steppe itself. When the Mongol armies began to roll westward, no one in Anatolia could truly comprehend what was coming. The Mongols did not merely fight wars, they annihilated systems. Their method of conquest was brutal but effective, overwhelming force, psychological terror, and total destruction of resistance. When they finally reached Anatolia, they encountered the Seljuk Sultanate at a moment of internal weakness. Court intrigue, succession disputes, and over-reliance on mercenaries had hollowed out the Seljuk state from within. In 1243, at the Battle of Kosei Dagh, the Seljuk army met the Mongols in open combat. It was not a battle, so much as a collapse. The Seljuk forces broke, fled, and never recovered. From that moment on, the Seljuk Sultanate became a Mongol vassal, paying tribute and obeying the commands of Mongol overlords. On paper, the Seljuks still ruled Anatolia, but in reality, their authority was shattered. Mongol governors and tax collectors drained the land, while Seljuk sultans became little more than figureheads. This was the first unintended step in the creation of the Ottoman Empire. By destroying the Seljuk state's centralized authority, the Mongols created a massive power vacuum across Anatolia. Into that vacuum poured chaos, opportunity, and ambition. Anatolia fragmented into dozens of small Turkish principalities known as beyliks. These were not mighty kingdoms, but frontier lordships, each ruled by a local warlord commanding a few thousand fighters at most. Some were former Seljuk generals, others tribal leaders, others adventurers drawn by the promise of land and plunder. They fought each other constantly, raided Byzantine territories to the west, and competed for Mongol favor or simply tried to stay beneath Mongol notice. One of these beyliks was insignificant almost to the point of invisibility. It lay on the very edge of Anatolia, bordering the weakening Byzantine frontier. Its leader was a minor chieftain named Ertugrul, and after him, his son Osman I. At the time, there was nothing to suggest that Osman's small domain would ever matter. He ruled a patch of land that most powerful rulers would have dismissed as worthless. Yet it was precisely this insignificance that allowed Osman's state to survive and grow. The Mongols were focused on extracting tribute and maintaining control over major population centers and trade routes. Remote frontier regions like Osman's territory were of little interest to them. This meant that while stronger, richer beyliks were crushed or tightly controlled by Mongol authority, Osman's beylik was left largely alone. This accidental neglect proved crucial. It gave Osman freedom to expand westward against the Byzantines, rather than fighting fellow Muslims or attracting Mongol intervention. Another unintended consequence of Mongol conquest was mass migration. As Mongol armies devastated Central Asia, Iran, and eastern Anatolia, waves of Turkic nomads fled westward. These refugees were warriors, herdsmen, and families hardened by violence and displacement. Many of them settled in frontier regions, where land was available and Byzantine defenses were weak. Osman welcomed them. Every new arrival meant more fighters, more horses, and more manpower. The Mongols never planned to strengthen a future Ottoman army, but that is exactly what their conquests did. These frontier warriors were bound together by the ideology of Ghazi, holy warfare against non-Muslims. Fighting Byzantines was not only profitable, but spiritually meaningful. Osman skillfully used this ideology to legitimize his leadership. He was not just a tribal chief, he was a Ghazi leader, chosen by destiny and faith to expand Islam's frontier. In a fractured Anatolia, where old authorities had collapsed, this simple, powerful message attracted followers from across the region. Meanwhile, the Mongol grip on Anatolia was slowly weakening. The Mongol Empire itself had fragmented after the death of its great khans. Rival khanates fought each other, central authority eroded, and distant provinces became increasingly autonomous. In Anatolia, Mongol power was exercised through intermediaries, and over time, even that control became sporadic. This gradual withdrawal did not restore the Seljuk state. Instead, it left behind a shattered political landscape, where only the strongest and most adaptable beyliks would survive. Osman's successors proved remarkably adaptable. They combined steppe warfare tactics inherited from Turkic and Mongol traditions, with siegecraft and administration learned from their Byzantine neighbors. This hybrid approach was another indirect gift of the Mongol era. The Ottomans learned from the ruins the Mongols left behind. They saw what total destruction looked like and understood the value of ruling rather than annihilating conquered populations. By the early 14th century, Osman's beylik had transformed into a growing state. His son Orhan captured key Byzantine cities, turning a frontier warband into a territorial power. None of this would have been possible without the Mongol destruction of the Seljuk order decades earlier. The Mongols had broken the old system so thoroughly that something entirely new could emerge in its place. It is important to understand that the Mongols did not design this outcome. They did not intend to create a rival empire that would one day dominate the eastern Mediterranean, conquer Constantinople, and rule vast swaths of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Their priorities were tribute, obedience, and stability on their own terms. Yet history often unfolds through unintended consequences. By smashing the Seljuk state, depopulating regions, triggering migrations, and neglecting marginal frontiers, the Mongols unknowingly cleared the ground on which the Ottomans would build. Even Ottoman military culture carried echoes of the Mongol world. Cavalry tactics, emphasis on mobility, and flexible command structures all reflected steppe traditions that had spread westward under Mongol domination. At the same time, the Ottomans avoided one of the Mongols' greatest weaknesses, overextension without integration. Where the Mongols ruled through fear, the Ottomans increasingly ruled through administration, law, and incorporation of conquered elites. By the time Mongol authority in Anatolia had faded almost entirely, the Ottomans were no longer a small beylik. They were a rising empire. The vacuum left by the Mongols did not remain empty for long. It was filled by a state forged in the chaos the Mongols had unleashed, shaped by the migrations they caused, and protected by the neglect they showed. In this way, the Mongols accidentally became midwives to the Ottoman Empire. Their conquests destroyed the old order, their violence reshaped societies, and their withdrawal left behind a fractured world desperate for stability. The Ottomans provided that stability, step by step, conquest by conquest, until they stood as one of the most powerful empires the world had ever seen. History often remembers empires for what they build, but sometimes their greatest legacy is what rises from their ruins. The Mongols conquered Anatolia, but they did not rule its future. That future belonged to the Ottomans, an empire born not in spite of Mongol destruction, but because of it.